Morning, fish keepers. Cam here from thefishroom.co.nz. We've done it. We've done Friday. Let's be happy. Woo. It's good coffee. It might be because it's my first one today, or it might just be because it's really, really good. That is very good. Okay, so today we have a special guest waiting in the wings, which is quite handy. Not a lot of admin today. Just quick reminders that the shop, the retail shop, is open tomorrow 10 till 3, and that's pretty much it. Just to make everyone aware that we've got the shop going and open on the weekend, so come on down. We have loaded up with a lot of dual media. We've also got bug bites back in stock and a couple other bits and pieces of a few new things hanging around. We've also got some very, very nice koi swordtails, albino koi swordtails that are about to make their way into the shop this morning. Unfortunately, they're all males, but they're absolutely phenomenal and would make a fantastic display fish if you're looking for a nice, beautiful koi male to go into your display tank, into your lounge or something like that. So they'll definitely be worth having a look at. Good morning, Helen, Brian, Tui, Rochelle, and Gary. Hope everybody is well. On my third coffee, I'd normally be on my third coffee by now, but today I was just a little bit relaxed on the caffeine intake. So you might notice that with a less jittery conversation and less weird hand movement. So we'll see how we go. I have not stopped cracking tanks. Thank you very much. I'm still well and truly in that process. John may or may not be with us today. He was having a bit of internet issues. With fingers crossing that he'll be able to jump on at some point during the stream, but at this point he is unable to connect, but we'll see how we go. So that's all the admin that I've got, so we can bring on our guest. Everybody welcome Grant from the Garden of Eder. Good morning.
Morning, how's it going?
Good. Thank you very much for joining us. It is very much appreciated. I'm assuming it's not morning for you, it's more afternoon type time.
Getting ready for dinner here about another hour, probably.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so first and foremost, got a few things I want to sort of talk to you about, but I did notice that you've just recently been at Aquashella, and so I just thought it would be nice to have a wee chat about that just quickly for the people over here that obviously can't get involved in that or not quite sure of what that is. So do you just want to give us a wee rundown of sort of what Aquashella is and what it is that you were there doing as well?
So Aquashella is a one-of-a-kind aquarium show that doesn't just host fresh and saltwater. They also do reptiles, but on top of that, they have a lot of exhibits for art. They have an aqua crib, which is basically a walkthrough with lasers and fog machines and all different displays of art that you can wear the UV glasses and see all the cool colors popping and whatnot. And that's basically the start to the show. And then there's, just vendors on vendors from anyone from Fluval to ourselves, which, we're more hobbyist based, where we're breeding and selling like shrimp foods that are, homemade and stuff like that by other shrimp sellers here in the States, and grow our own plants and a few nurseries and stuff like that we have here in Florida that we get off and curate and stuff like that we sell at our booth. But overall, there's no really other shows like that. They have a stage where they've got speakers from all over on all different topics, fresh and saltwater. They even had a speaker on axolotls at the last show. They also have scape offs for fresh and saltwater. I participated in the freshwater scape off against Jen Williams, and I was victorious in that one. Thought I only had an hour to scape. Found out I only had 15 minutes to scape. So it was a bit poor planning on my part, but it ended up working out. They also have they host a shrimp contest there that myself and Shelby are in charge of organizing and get that to run, where all the shrimp breeder, well, not all of them, but the best shrimp breeders in America enter 3 to 5 shrimp to compete in 6 different categories. We had 43 entries of some really high-end shrimp. Some of them weren't that high-end, but you do get a mix of beginner entries, and they'll get their judges' score sheets, and they'll get some feedback on how they can improve and do better next time. And that's what the American Shrimp Contest is all about, kind of gearing them up for the bigger shows, the harder contests and stuff like that. There's also a media lounge with different YouTubers from all over. There's a creator escape contest. Shelby took first place in that. It's a bit smaller tanks. And then we also had the Fluval Aquascape contest. Shelby and myself, we did a tank in that. We got best in color, but we did not place. We did qualify to move on in Daytona. There is another, it's the not the qualifier, the championship basically. The winner gets $5,000 for that escape contest in Daytona. So they've got a huge raffle, tons of different vendors. There's really nothing like it. There's a lot of nice pet stores out there, but there's not any with that amount of selection and different options out there,
That sounds phenomenal. And that's just run over a single weekend?
Yeah, it's just Saturday and Sunday. The vendors get about 2 days to set everything up, and then it's crazy that the entire show pretty much has to be taken down in 5 hours afterwards.
Wow, that is intense.
Yeah.
Wow. Is 2 days enough to get around and really appreciate everything that's there, or you kind of just feel like you're buzzing from one to another just to get through it all? It sounds absolutely massive.
Because we have so much going on, I really do miss a lot of the show. But if you're just, one of the people riding through and enjoying the show, and you don't have to vend or participate in any of the contests, 2 days is good enough. But you definitely want to make sure you pay attention to the schedule and see what's going on, so that way you can see what speakers you want to hit up. And if you got kids, there's the kids aquascape contest. There's a lot of different things you can do on both days, so it's a lot of fun.
That sounds like, I'm sure, many people's dream come true, to spend a couple of days just with other people that are associated with wanting to keep aquariums and stuff like that, and just being fully encompassed with that for a couple of days.
Yeah, that really is the best part. Is I get to see some of my friends from all over the country, all over the world, that I don't ever get to see unless we go to these shows. They're not local to Florida, or even the ones that are local to Florida. It's a big enough state, 4 hours away. Sometimes I only see these people at the Aquashella. So it is a really nice show to go to, just for the people as well.
Yeah. You had Sam spending some time with you prior to it, didn't you?
Yeah. So our local aquarium club, the Aquatic Club of Pasco County, it is one of the larger, more active clubs. We have anywhere from 90 to 120 people at the meetings in person. And Sam was our speaker for last month. So
cool. Yeah. Awesome.
It was great to have him come down and show the kids a couple fishing tricks and stuff like that, take them to our favorite collecting spots, and show him a little bit around Florida that he hasn't seen already down in the Everglades and other parts.
Yeah, we had him on here probably 2 years ago now, give or take. Very, very interesting man, and very talented with what he can do and what he does. Yeah, very cool.
That's actually how I found your channel. Was I saw Sam on here,
yeah.
And I did a little diving into your channel because you're from New Zealand. My whole dad's side of the family is from New Zealand. I'm first generation, so I was like, oh, this is really neat. All around the world, we have the fish fam working together. So
yeah, cool. Okay, so we'll just get back onto the original train of thoughts and talking about what it is that you guys are doing. How did you get involved in the hobby, and sort of where did that start in your life and that kind of stuff?
So before we were doing shrimp keeping, we were keeping reptiles. Shelby wanted a chameleon. Got our chameleon. Then we found out we were having a kid. And I was like, well, the chameleon's kind of expensive with feeding, replacing light bulbs, upgrading cages and stuff like that. What can I do to kind of alter some of those costs? and I got the idea to get another chameleon, breed them out, and then sell some of the babies to cover some of those costs. We were very lucky and successful with the first batch, and used that one to pay for the next one. Before we knew it, we had like 60 different breeder chameleons and
Wow.
like 30 to 60 babies and like 90 eggs in the incubator. And then my dad had offered to sell me his landscape business, and I no longer had time to take care of crickets and worms for 2 hours a day just to feed my reptiles.
Yeah.
But when I used to sell the geckos and chameleons on Craigslist and stuff like that, there'd always be this guy advertising for freshwater cherry shrimp. And I got just interested one night and decided to read all the way through it. And when I got out of the chameleons and into landscaping, I wanted to have something that I could work on with genetics. And I was like, oh, well, these shrimp seem like a quicker turnaround than chameleons. I should be able to do something a lot faster. And just one tank turned into 3 tanks of red cherries, and I got a different variety. And, with fish keeping, there was a lot of ups and downs. With shrimp keeping, it was a lot of ups. I didn't have many downs until Layla threw a quesadilla in the tank. But besides that, it was a lot of like, let's buy this, let's try this, and everything kept working, and there wasn't a lot of setbacks. There was a few, like I lost almost all of my blue velvets except for one, but I used that one to breed with the red cherries, and I got red rillies with blue bodies. So I kind of like that wasn't a loss, that was a win. Like, and I moved forward with it. And if I hadn't had that happen right in the beginning, maybe I would have been a little bit deterred and not hit it so hard. But everything after that kind of fell into place. And before I knew it, I had 155 tanks and 45 different varieties. And I was like, well, maybe I can focus on this mainstream and make that my only source of a living. And I sold my landscape business off, and Shelby picked up a few extra side jobs, and we made it work until, now we're looking at Shelby possibly quitting her one and only job at West Marine that pays pretty well. But I think we'd be better off pulling her out of that and just focusing on this full time.
Yeah, cool. It's something quite powerful when the things that you've been building just kind of begins to snowball, and all of a sudden you can do what you love to feed your family. It's a really powerful moment when that kind of realization happens, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I'm quite pale-skinned in Florida and doing landscaping. I was out in the sun 8 hours a day, and I was just constantly thinking to myself, what can I do to get out of this? Yeah. And, breeding shrimp, I felt like taking that leap and doing the jump, and everything just, really played out nicely.
Cool. So you're fully given up landscaping and breeding shrimp as your vibe?
Yeah, for about 6 years now, I think. Yeah.
Nice, awesome, cool. You said before you had 45 species. I think that's right. Is that varieties? Is that still where it's at, or is that number expanded, or because I've read that you've got the most varieties available in America? Is that how's that go?
So that's where I was about 6 years ago. Now we're up to, and I only had 155 tanks at the time. Now we're up to 390 aquariums in the house, and we have over 140 different varieties of freshwater shrimp. So nice. I could break those down to like separate, like King Kong patterns where there's 1 stripe, 2 stripe, and stuff like that, and make it more than 140. But just like base model, I got 140 different varieties of shrimp.
Yeah, cool. So we don't have shrimp here, so having 140 varieties, is that like over several different species? Is it over like one species with different color varieties? How is that kind of genetically working?
So pretty much we carry 4 different species: the Neocaridina, Caridina, Suluese, and the Opaula. The Opaula is a brackish type shrimp from Hawaii. The Neocaridina can be broken down into several different colors. So each color is a different variety. There's really not a lot of patterns, but there is rillies, and the rillies are like color on the head, color on the tail, but no color in the body. There could be a blue body, or we even got some orange rillies with like little tiny bits of green coloration to the body. So lots of different projects and stuff like that, but there's not a lot of striping or dots or anything like that with the Neocardinas. There is like a racing back going down the stripe. So there's a couple different varieties that you can get off of those, but for the most part, I think there's only like 16 to 19 different varieties of Neocardina. Then you get into Cardinas, and there's different tiger shrimp, there's different bees, and then you can crossbreed those into a lot of different hybrids. And then the hybrids can all be broken down by different head patterns, body patterns, colors. So there's probably where we get like 100 different types of our shrimp is just in the Caridina shrimp alone.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm kind of just envisioning a little bit like a bristle nose. You have like a brown one, a golden one, the red one, the green one, blah blah blah, and then longfin varieties, and that's just kind of how that is all. They're all a bristle nose and astrus, and it's just kind of branched off, working a bit like that.
Yeah, and then you get into the honeycomb or the wobbin muster, and that's where you kind of get into like the different patterns and the colors. So, like the next thing for the ancistrus would be like a full red wobbin muster, the honeycomb. You know, that's where we've taken the shrimp is a little bit further than that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we just had a question from the comments. Have you invented your own? I'm assuming a variety as opposed to species, but your own color morphs and that sort of stuff have come direct from you into the hobby?
Not an entire colony except for the headless horseman, but it's kind of like something that was done already in Germany. I think they also mimicked it, but they didn't find a lot of interest in it, where I thought it was kind of cool that there's no color in the head pattern, so I kind of bred those out. It's just a yellow King Kong with no color on the head, where they were trying to breed out a yellow King Kong with no color on the body, but color in the head. That's a Missouri pattern. I just basically did a reverse Missouri. And then besides that, I don't have anything that I would really like claim to my own besides the super crystal whites. It's a ghost bee, which I bred out all of the clear air translucent bits, and it's just solid white. And unlike a snow white, it doesn't have any pink or orange coloration to it, even if it's like dulled down because of lighting or stress or anything like that. So, but they're not really breeding to the point where I've sold any and I've gotten them out on the market. We've got some greens, we've got some mutations and stuff like that, but I haven't mass produced those yet and gotten them on the market to say I've invented my own, new species or anything like that.
Yeah. Wow. So another question. What is the largest shrimp? I'll bring it up. What is the largest shrimp species and the size of the smallest? Are they all the same, or are they various in that? I'm assuming that's come from the words King Kong would be a slightly big one. Again, we don't have shrimp, so I don't know, but yeah.
No, yellow King Kong and black King Kong, those shrimp are basically the same size as all the other ones that I keep. All the shrimp that we keep that I consider dwarf freshwater shrimp get no more than a larger than 1.5 inches. But realistically, those are like freak shrimp. Most of them aren't going to get larger than 1 inch in size. I've got some shrimp that max out about 3/4 of an inch. And then we do have some Machiobrachium, which are the shrimp out of Peru that will get 3 to 6 inches in size, but I don't consider those as the dwarf shrimp. Monos, the bamboos, the vampire shrimp, I don't consider those as the dwarf shrimp out of the 140 species that we keep. They're just slightly larger.
Yeah. Have you got a colony of all of the species that are about, or is there still some that are eluding you that you're trying to get hold of?
There's still some that I'm trying to get a hold of. There's some that I had once upon a time, and they were all imports, and not all imported shrimp are going to breed for you or do well. And so I'd like to get my hands on some of the wild types that They're just not popular in the hobby anymore. They were maybe 6 or 8 years ago when I was just getting into it. I wish I had those just so I could have them all. Even though they're not that popular, they don't sell that well. I'd still like to keep a tank or two for them if I can get my hands on them. So anybody watching this, you have the actual wild type galaxy tigers and the leopard tigers. Those are two right offhand that I wish I could get my hands on. The blue bees, the paracaridina.
It's quite interesting how the hobby will run in cycles, and for 2 or 3 years, this particular species or variety of fish or whatever is really popular. Everyone gets them, everyone mass produces them, and then because everyone's got them, they become less popular. 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the track, man, I wish I could get hold of whatever it was because they've just disappeared. So it's really interesting how that happens in every parts of the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I always try to get my hands on them. And there's a couple opportunities where I was like, nah, I don't need to buy this colony. I can get them the next time they're offered up, and that didn't happen. So
yeah.
But I never let go of anything after I let go of my red really blue bodies. I learned that lesson because as soon as I sold off the colony, everybody wanted them 3 months down the line, and I was like, I ain't doing that again.
Put some more tanks in and hold some more stock.
Yeah.
So, where are the shrimps sort of naturally found? Like you said, these particular ones coming out of Peru, are they sort of quite globally found, or specific continents or specific regions for them?
So the ones out of Peru are just the Machiobrachium species. I do have a smaller variety of them that don't get larger than an inch, but the majority of them do get quite large. But the Neocaridina and Caridina, most of them come from Asia, Vietnam, Korea, Hong Kong. I have a lot of different wild type shrimp out of that region. We do have some wild types from Finland. But other than Finland, I think all of them come out of Asia.
Yeah, wow, cool. So obviously you've got a lot of different varieties and you've got a lot of aquariums. What's your breeding setup like for this? I'm looking behind you, they look like fairly small aquariums. Is that enough to house one, or is there a whole lot of stuff you need to run through to keep them going? Do you want to run through your setup a little bit?
So generally speaking, we use a 10-gallon tank for the smallest size to breed our colonies out. The larger, the better, because of water parameters will be a lot easier to keep stable with a larger volume of water. And then with a 10-gallon tank, I find that it's just big enough that the shrimp's growth rate and overall size won't be reduced due to the lack of environment space. So 10-gallon tank, we have substrate, depends on the different type of shrimp. For Neocaridina, you can use an inert substrate. For Caridina, we need an active substrate that's going to buffer the water into the low 6s, if not down into 5 pH would be fine enough for most of our shrimp. And then just a sponge filter, a little bit of moss. You can throw in some wood to get fancy, but other than that, you just need water. And then the type of water depends on the type of shrimp.
Okay, cool. We've had another question from the floor. Are the wild forms coloured, or are they all from selective breeding?
So some of the wild types are very colorful. The Hummel shrimp, the wild type ones from Finland, they're purple, blue, and white, without any selective breeding at all. The raccoons are kind of purplish and bluish in color. Those are wild type shrimp. The Stardust are a wild type out of Hong Kong. The males and the juveniles are fairly ugly, not a lot of color to them at all. But when the females get pregnant, their whole body turns into like a galaxy. The body itself will get black or purplish in color, and then there'll be all different maroon and magenta and metallic colors and dots that just appear out of nowhere, and that's where they get their name, the Stardust. So some of the wild type shrimps are really neat, but then a lot of the most colorful shrimp though are selective bred for color and pattern and stuff like that. So majority of the nicer ones are not wild types.
Was it the color of the shrimp that initially drew you into it? Because I know you spoke about the highs, lots of highs on the way through at the beginning of your journey, but was it that color that drew you there straight away?
I think it was the colors and patterns with the chameleons that I was doing. I was trying to make a purple barred ambilobe chameleon. I know they're really popular now, but like at first in the hobby, there wasn't a lot of them. And then with chameleons, it's you get 3 days to pair them up together. Then she's going to take like 30 days for her to lay her eggs, and then those eggs are going to take 6 months to 16 months to hatch. And then once those
Wow.
eggs hatch, I won't know if it's a stud or a dud of a male for a year. So it takes that long for the color to pop. So when I stumbled upon shrimp, what really intrigued me was the turnaround rate. So for a female shrimp, she's going to hold her eggs for about 30 days on average. If it's warmer, it could be about 20, 25 days. If it's colder, it could be up to 45 days.
Mhm.
So once that egg hatches, though, I can have babies from that shrimp up to around 3 months from there. So the
Yeah.
turnaround for the shrimp is a lot quicker, not as fast as fruit flies, but the possibility to make something new it's a lot easier. That's why I
Mm.
have so many tanks. That's why I do so many different types of crossbreeding is because of that one question. Do I have any lines that I invented myself? Or, that's the goal. I come from a line of sailors, a line of explorers. There isn't any new territory that we can go out there and conquer or find anything new. So, like, trying to make something, breed something out myself, that's the goal right now. Yeah.
Next big thing. Cool. So, how do you select what it is that you like? If you're working towards something, how do you select this is the female and this is the male that I sort of want to work towards? Or do you see something slightly different from one of the, are they called fry? The shrimp babies called fry, or are they called something different?
I think we just call them shrimplets. We don't really
Little
refer
shrimp-
to fry that much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, do you see something in a shrimplet that's got a slight different variation to the rest of them, and you pull that out and go, I want to try and further this? Or how does that production side of it work for you?
So once you crossbreed for the first couple of generations, you're going to get a bunch of ugly type shrimp or common shrimp that a lot of people have already done. So for me, it's breeding as many different varieties and going down as many different roads as I possibly can, so that way I can travel down a road that somebody else hasn't gone. So when I'm doing a crossbreeding project, I'm looking for quite a few different things. One's color, one's dots, one's stripes, and then it could be a mix of all three that just aren't there. A lot of the patterns, the colors will be the exact same. Like the red will be in the exact same place, and the white will be in the exact same place. But what if I can be the first one to flip them so they have red stripes instead of white stripes or something like that? So
Cool. Yeah.
I'm always looking for anything like that, and chances are you might only find one for one generation, and then you use that one with its sister or mother or something like that, so that way you can get the genes replicated, and then the next generation you get two, and then hopefully you get a male and a female that look the same or have the same trait that you're trying to copy on, and then it's a lot of culling and removing all the ugly ones and stuff like that. So it is why I like to keep extra tanks, so that way if I'm going down in one path and there's two different cool things that I want to work with, I can try and select a breed, because chances are if you try to do both at the same time, you'll go and you'll revert back to the dominant genes. So the recessive genes, you want to try and keep them as strict as possible and cull them and just try and replicate it moving forward.
Yeah, cool. We had another question up here. Are there any of the species that are produced live, or is it all straight from egg and hatching and stuff like that?
So because they're kind of like holding the eggs on their body, they kind of are like a live bird. They're not like hiding their eggs or releasing their eggs or anything like that. They're keeping them in their swimmerettes. So in a way, they are a live bearer.
Okay.
But I think all of the shrimp do hold on their eggs. I just think because of how translucent they are, you can see the eggs a little bit better than you can in like a guppy or something like that.
Yeah, right with you. Cool. I'm having some dramatic issues here with my computer. It keeps flicking the screen on me, which is beginning to be quite annoying. I'm sorry about that.
It's not happening on this end. I don't see it here. So
Yeah, it just keeps. I've got a list of my questions on another screen, and it just keeps bringing it up, saying, "Do you want to leave this page?" Which I clearly don't want to do. So it's just flicking me on and off, which is quite frustrating at the moment. So you spoke about shrimp contests and stuff like that. Is that quite a big thing over there? And how does that system work as well?
So it was a really big thing. It's kind of died down a little bit. There is an international contest coming back because of COVID. They stopped doing the international shows. They were doing the international ones in Jersey and Chicago back when the aquatic experience was a thing. That's a show that is no longer touring in America or anywhere else for that matter. So they haven't really found a different show to replace it. So next month at the North Carolina Aquatic Expo, there is an international contest. So we'll see how the turnout is and for that. But for me as a shrimp breeder, I like to do the contest because let's say if I beat another breeder and I get the award, well, my line will be in higher demand. More people will want my line because it's more appealing because it's award winning. We do currently have the most awards for any homebred shrimp in America. I have, I can't remember how many different awards we've won from the different shows, but we had a group of not fancy, black tigers with orange eyes that traveled to 6 different contests with me. They were over 5 years old. They were massive in
Wow.
size, every bit of an inch and a half. But sadly, they were not able to make it, forever. They do have a lifespan. So a lot of people thought it was through 3 to 4 years, but I think with proper care, you can get 4 to 6 years, no problem.
Cool. That was actually going to lead into my next question on sort of what's the longevity of them. So when you're at the competitions, what is it that the judges are kind of looking for? Is it like the form of the body? Is it the patterning? Is it how does that marking system work?
So, biggest part of the score for the most part is uniformity. So,
Mm-hmm.
all 5 of the shrimp that you send, they need to look like, they came from the exact same egg. So that way they're
Right.
sharing the exact same pattern, the exact same color scheme, everything like that. Another big part of the score is going to be the intensity of the color, how difficult it is to breed that specific color or pattern. And then size really does matter. So is the shrimp full grown? Full grown is around 3 centimeters or 1 inch. But there is bonus points. So the shrimp that I entered in the contest that were every bit of 1.5 inches, I was dominating in those contests in that category because those shrimp were quite larger than everybody else's. Not only that, but they were black tigers and they're just solid in color. So it's really easy to match them and make them identical to one another. The bigger the shrimp, the better, the more points you're going to get. Overall health, so that's going to be body shape and stuff like that. And then, did they survive the trip? So they allow you to send in 5. They only judge about 3 of them. They're supposed to judge the best 3. So if you can't send in
Okay.
all 5 that look identical and you send in 2 that are, just in case something happens to one of the other ones, you've got a chance still to score a high enough score to place.
Okay, cool. We just had another question here. Have you experimented to see if breeding them reduces the lifespan like other animals?
So with the Neocaridina shrimp, for sure, if you put them outside, they'll breed faster, they'll grow quicker, and everything like that, but they won't live as long. So if you keep them inside with cooler temperatures, that's where I think they'll live the 4 to 6 years. But if you're keeping them outside, like some of our totes outside in the summer here in Florida, will get in the 90s, and the shrimp are still fine in there. But their breeding and their lifespan is definitely shortened down to probably 2 years in those temperatures.
You said they've got, like a producible after sort of around about the 3 month mark. From that point, do they produce the entire time of their lifespan, or do they kind of taper off after a little while, or are they viable all the way through?
They're for the most part they're viable all the way through.
Yeah.
They don't generally produce like 12 batches of eggs every year. I'd say on average they do about 10. There is a bit of stress involved and stuff like that with just producing eggs one after another. So I do think the shrimp themselves kind of take a break. They get tired, and they won't quite have eggs one after another. So don't get too stressed out if you're the best producing female all of a sudden hasn't laid eggs for 30 days or so. It can be common for them to take a little bit of a break or a hiatus. Also, during the winter months, it is kind of like a myth that they'll reduce the amount of breeding or stop altogether during the winter time. For us, we just increase the amount of water changes that we do, increase the amount of water we take out, and increase the amount of food we feed, and we're able to keep the shrimp breeding throughout the winter. But out of 300 tanks that we have for shrimp, we have 390 tanks in the house. Like 90 of them are for most of Shelby's fish. I do have a couple of fish of my own, but for the most part, 300 of the tanks are dedicated to breeding shrimp. I'm not going to have all 300 of them producing and doing well at all times of the year. I might have issues with 5 to 10 tanks where I just can't get them into gear. And a couple of months down the line, I didn't change anything, and all of a sudden they just take off. And then another tank over here will just slow down or cut back. So they definitely go in little cycles and stuff like that.
Just like fish as well, they'll
Yeah.
produce or max for a while, and then they'll slow down for whatever reason or another. How big are the clutches? I'm assuming it's called a clutch. How big are the clutches per female? Does that depend on the female, or is there a relatively uniform number that sort of comes through?
So, like some of the Sulu SA shrimp will produce a little bit less eggs, the Opa Ula and stuff like that. But the Neocaridina and Caridina, they're roughly 30 eggs.
Cool. Sweet. It's not a bad number every month. Well, every month and a bit. Yeah, cool. So you mentioned before you've got your own sort of homemade food. So what is the feeding requirements for them? And obviously you're making your own. Is there like a big market on the mass-produced stuff? Is there lots like fish, some high-quality stuff, some low-quality stuff? What's the general requirements and that sort of thing?
So we actually don't make it. We get it from another shrimp seller that makes it in Oregon. So we get it off of them. Their diet is basically anything that's dead, dying on the way out. They'll eat. They're scavengers. 60% of their diet should be stuff that's growing naturally in the tank. There's this little film that grows over everything naturally called biofilm. It's naked to the eye unless you get like a brand new piece of wood and you throw it in the tank. Like grape wood will produce a ton, and Mapani will produce a ton of this white film. It's just biofilm. That's a shrimp's favorite food. That's the best diet for a shrimp, but it shouldn't be eating that alone. 40% of its other diet should be dead things that are falling into the river, dead fish, unbitten bits and pieces of different things that are just dying and decaying in the river. So that's what we're basically supplementing with our shrimp food. So I like to do a good variety. The Shrimp Envy food line that we get, they produce quite a few different lines of food. We like to rotate them, so we feed our shrimp every other day. And then, we have about 7 to 9 different foods that we feed at every given point. We do have a few other different lines of food that aren't shrimp envy that I like to rotate in the mix as well. And that kind of ensures that they get, everything, every little bit of nutrition, just like, the seasons outside. You got to think, different things are going to be falling in the river at different points in the time. They're not getting the same kind of diet. Just like, we don't want to eat chicken nuggets every single meal of our life. So I like to mix it up for the shrimp and give them, good variety.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Cool. So what are water conditions? Are they picky? Do they need to be really pristine for them, or is there a bit of lax in there? Like how are they for that type of thing?
So there's different kinds of shrimp for everybody's convenience
Hmm.
sake. So for those that are kind of relaxed and lazy with their water parameters, the Neocaridina can almost stand like 80% of the people's tap water here in the States. There are some people's tap water that the conductivity is over 1,000. That might not be the best for shrimp. They might still live and thrive in that, but week to week, those parameters and stuff can change quite quickly with the hardness and different compounds in the water there. And then there's also some people's water where the hardness just isn't high enough for them to molt, and they've got to add minerals back into the water. But for the most part, 80% of the people that I talk to, their water is just fine for neocaridinas. Inert substrate, they're not really going to be picky about their water, even if it's low pH or a little high pH or neutral. They're going to be able to breed or thrive in all of those different water conditions. Where the caridina, these are going to need very stable, very consistent, low pH. That's why we use an active straight to lower pH, and then we stick with RO only water, and we
Hmm.
have to make sure that we use GH only minerals so that way the KH doesn't try to neutralize the pH. So that's essential for the baby survival rate for the caridina shrimp. And then you've got Suluese shrimp, which are basically the reverse. They require the harder water. So we use crushed coral, argonite in their substrate to make sure the pH is buffered the opposite way.
Cool. Okay. Um, as far as tank mates go, obviously you're not wanting to have fish with them that are going to eat them. Is the variety of other species or other aquatic animals you can have living with them fairly broad, or is there some no goes? And is that in the same sense of the shrimp can't live with other other fish or even other shrimp because they won't work together? Is that quite a broad environment, or is it not so much?
So basically, with the fish, whatever can fit in a fish's mouth can be food. And with the shrimp,
Yeah.
they're just one of the easier things to fit in a fish's mouth. They're rather small, and they just look like a snack. Most fish in the wild are eating some form of shrimp. So with the fish selection, the smaller the fish, the smaller the mouth, the little bit better of a choice it is to keep with a tank mate. I like the celestial pearl danios. They're a great
Hmm.
option. A lot of the Achilles fish that keeps, rice fish, those are a great option to keep with the shrimp. But they're going to pick off some of the babies still. And then not only that, but just having the shrimp in with the fish alone. I mentioned that the shrimp should be breeding probably releasing 12 or 10 clutches a year. Well, you add in fish, that number could reduce down to 8. It could, reduce all the way down to 0 just because they're stressed out by the fish.
Hmm.
My worst example of this was we threw pygmy cories into a really healthy, booming red cherry tank. All the red cherries stopped producing. As soon as I took the cories out months later, the red cherries started bearing up and started having babies again. So just because the pygmy cories, they like to school and they like to swim in and out of the little nooks and crannies that the buried shrimp would hide out in, and try to de-stress and relax. So it's preventing the breeding from happening altogether in that tank.
I guess they would see, because they are where they are in the food chain, anything. in and around slightly bigger as a potential threat, and that would increase the stress pretty easily.
Yeah, snails are a good one to keep in with the shrimp. The slime behind the snails, the shrimp will actually pick at that and eat at that, like the fresh. It's not really a slime that they leave behind. It's more like the snail might eat some of the rougher scum and residue and leave behind some of the easier bits and pieces that the shrimp can come behind and eat. Assassin snails, those are too slow to eat any healthy shrimp, so those are a fine one to keep with your shrimp. I like the Malaysian trumpet snails because they'll kind of dig in and eat any of the uneaten food that the shrimp won't get. Ram's horns, they can come in pink and red and blue varieties, so those are kind of a nice little addition to the tanks. I kind of stay away from the neurite snails just because of the eggs that they can scatter all over the plants and walls and stuff like that. But snails are a good little addition to the tanks. We've got some aquatic isopods you can keep in there with the shrimp as well. But there isn't a lot that you can keep and actually focus on breeding the shrimp as well.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you brought up snails because that was actually my next question I was coming in through, and what snails can be kept with them, work together with them, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, cool. Mystery snails, are they an option with them, or are they not such a good idea?
No, they are. They're fine. They're a
Yeah.
little bit messier. They'll eat a lot more food, so you kind of got to keep up on doing your water changes a little bit more. Having any nitrites in the water can burn the gills on the shrimp. So if those levels get too high, the ammonia gets too high, the shrimp population can definitely go down on you real quick.
Cool. So, how many species of snails do you currently keep? Because I've seen you've got them on your website and that sort of stuff as well.
I don't know how many different varieties of trumpet snails we have, but we got trumpets, ponds, ram's horns. We've probably got 5 different varieties of ram's horn snails, 3 different varieties of mysteries, 3 different varieties of rabbit snails, and the assassins. I think that's about it.
Cool.
I want to get some turbo snails and some other. I do have some neurite snails, but just a one tank. That's it.
Yeah. I've seen on, I can't remember if it was your Instagram or your TikTok or one of your socials that you're running on, you set up a whole bunch of tubs for aquatic plants beside the large IBC totes that you've got on your backyard stuff. Is that,
Yeah.
Are you looking at propagating large quantities of plants to go with your snails as a little side hobby for you? Because obviously you're involved in landscape gardening. Like, how has that kind of developed and come through as well?
So that started off because with the shrimp, there's not a lot of things you can keep with with them that aren't going to bother them besides the plants. So I've just kind of organically grown into being like the plant guy at all of our club meetings as well as the shrimp guy. So everybody always comes and asks me for this or hey, try this out. I can't get this to grow or something like that. And then I've just been able to grow a lot of the bread and butter kind of plants that are really well. There's a lot of demand for in the hobby, like guppy grass. I can't tell you how many people ask us for guppy grass all the time, and I was throwing it away by trash bag fulls, just tossing it in the compost pile, and then I'm seeing bags of guppy grass, small bags, going for like $20 in our auction, and I'm going, that's ridiculous. I'm going to start bringing like big heaping bags, and everybody's going to be breeding more fish and whatnot because of it. So it kind of started off with that, and I've just kind of organically grown, and we've added crypts and swords, and there is kind of a demand for better plants here in the States. A lot of them come out of nurseries where they're grown immersed here in Florida, and a lot of the reasons for that is they hold up and they ship a lot better, and then in the end they do acclimate and adapt to your water parameters. But there's still a lot of algae issues and stuff like that from our big box stores, and a lot of the local pet stores here in Florida a lot of the ones that would have the passion to put into like a high, like we went to the fish crew or the fish gallery, I'm sorry, in Dallas, and we don't have anything that nice here in Florida. But even some of the plants there had algae. So, just keeping our standards a little bit higher and not selling anything that has even a little strand of hair algae or anything like that. I think there's a good market for that. So I've just kind of been growing and increasing our variety, and it's gotten to the point where, okay, I think I could, triple the amount of tubs that we've got going. And instead of just having everything in one grow bed, I'm kind of growing them all into separate bins now. So we do have a 32-foot by 30-foot greenhouse that we were using to grow plumerias back when I did landscaping. But, I could easily turn that into a greenhouse just for aquatic plants. So if it gets that big, it gets that big. But right now we're just baby steps until then.
Do you grow them all immersed, or are you growing them submersed, or are we mixture?
So the plan is to grow like 3 bins of one variety immersed, and when one variety maxes out one of the bins, then I take that bin and I take like half of it and I put it inside into one of the tanks to grow them submerged. So we'll have the option for you to purchase both. But like I'll have the disclaimer, like the ones that are grown submerged, they don't transition, they don't travel well. But bringing them to the shows and stuff like that, you're able to get them, without them going through all the postal care and stuff like that, because a lot of our trucks here in America, they don't have any air conditioning. So they'll sit on a truck here in Florida for 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours on their route. And some of those plants are just melting a lot quicker than if they were grown immersed out of water. They hold up a lot better. So they've got their pros and cons, and I'll make, the choice clear for both options, and let the customer choose what they want to work with.
There's definitely some advantage of immersed and some advantage of submersed, and I don't know which one is better as far as production and sales and in product for customers, because they both have some ups and downs. It's almost a catch-22 no matter which way you kind of go with them.
Yeah, so I figured I'd just do both. If we've got the room and we can, and we just offer it up. But I'm not going to get into like having 50 different stems of Rotala or Laguidia or something like that. I'm just going to do the very basics, and then I might have like 2 or 3 different rare options. But I'm not going to go down the shrimp rabbit hole where I had to have them all with the plant. With the plants, it's going to be more of like an additive to be with the shrimp. For the most part, if I do anything plant related like that, it'll be moss, just because I can keep a different moss in every kind of shrimp that I keep. So we've been trying to get rid of all the tanks that have like more than one type of moss growing in, because they just grow into one another, they get tangled, and then it's so hard to separate them. So we offer mixed cups to beginners and at a discounted rate, and we've been getting them out of the house one tank at a time.
I understand the joys of trying to pull apart moss when it gets tangled up. It's easier just not to. What are shrimps like for controlling algae? Are they into eating that stuff, or is it not them? Or some do, some don't.
All right. So the way I see it is the shrimp will not actually eat the algae itself unless the algae is dying it. So for like even a mono shrimp and stuff like that, the shrimp are competing for the most part the same food source that the algae is. So rather than the algae getting that food, the shrimp will be eating that food. So if your algae is coming from you overfeeding your fish, now all of a sudden your shrimp is eating those little bits of food that your fish didn't get, getting the food that your fish didn't get, not the fish. Then the algae isn't going to be getting that out of the water column, so it's going to prevent your algae from dying, or from growing. And when it happens, if it's not growing, it's dying. And once it starts dying, then you'll see the shrimp actually picking at it and eating the algae and stuff like that. But if the algae is healthy and the algae is thriving, the the shrimp are never going to eat it. And to prove it, I've got a hot tub where we've got our koi and turtle system. And right now the hot tub, it had some baby koi in it, but right now it's got probably 5,000 shrimp in just my hot tub. But the algae is just growing out of control because
Yeah.
it's in direct sun. I'm overfeeding the koi and the fry and stuff like that. So the algae is just growing, and the shrimp doesn't have a chance to eat any of it. So
Yeah. Cool. That all makes total sense.
yeah, you're better off going after the algae by reducing your lights, increasing the amount of water changes you do, increase the time or decrease the time between water changes, and reduce the amount of food. You can also raise your lights a little bit, but doing all of those things will help you get ahead of your algae way quicker than adding some shrimp into the tank.
Yeah. Do you sell to like pet shops and wholesalers and that sort of stuff, or you direct to consumer, direct just only to hobbyists at events and on your website, or do you have
Uh,
outlets to move your stuff around other ways?
Yeah, so for the most part, we try to sell directly to the consumer. Last year, we did do a lot of wholesale, but since Shelby has been on me and getting us out there on the YouTube a lot more, our sales have picked up where I've actually had to stop doing all of our wholesale just so
Okay.
we can keep up with the demand and meet our own retail uh, site sales. So we're expanding so that way maybe next year we can go back to offering up some shrimp on the wholesale side again. But if the YouTube side keeps growing, I don't know if we'll be able to make that goal.
Yeah. Cool. Always a good issue to have if things are growing in the directions they need to, and having to work through those things is always better than not going that direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wholesale is great because I can catch 500 shrimp and put it in
Wow.
one box and ship it out. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm getting $1 for that shrimp instead of $2.
Yeah.
So
Catch 22.
it gets weird in numbers a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So fish. What fish do you keep, and what fish does Shelby keep, and where does that play a part in your lives? Obviously, the shrimp is the main vibe, but where does the fish come into it?
So growing up, I always had a koi pond. When I visited Hawaii, and my dad living in Hawaii a good part of his life, you go to the malls, you go to a lot of places, and there's koi ponds all over Hawaii. And so just coming home, having a koi pond, it's just always been, I've always had fish, whether it was in the house or outside in the koi pond. So we've got probably 55 koi right now that are larger than 8 inches in the swimming pool, and then like 50 fry from this year that are growing up. And then I like to keep discus. I've got the wild discus from Peru, the green spotted ones. Those
Cool.
are like my dream type fish. And then I've got some apistos, some rice fish, and then some plecos, and then everything else I think is Shelby's. Shelby has a lot of gadaids, a lot of different guppies, endlers, a lot of different killies and rainbows. I got a couple of rainbows myself, but Shelby likes the Pseudo McGills, the thread fins.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. They all kept for production purposes, or just for the enjoyment of having these fish around and enjoying what they do?
So like the koi fish is for enjoyment purposes. I got my buddy Mark who's always like, "Oh, dude, sell the ugly ones," and I'm like, I just kind of like having more koi. If I get too many, I'll build a bigger pond, you know. uh, so I would be okay if the angel or the discus bred, and then I ended up selling some of the fry and stuff like that. But I think I'd always keep some of them back for myself. But we're not focusing on breeding any of the fish right now, besides some of the guppies we've got going outside. And those are just like on autopilot. You don't even have to feed them with the amount of mosquitoes and stuff that we have here in Florida. So Shelby has right now still a full-time job. So she isn't able to breed the fish and keep everything going the way she wants to get them going. Eventually, though, we will be producing as many fish as we possibly can, just like the shrimp. But the biggest thing is getting all of the fish into one spot. So it makes it easy to do the baby brine and move eggs and play, musical fish chairs and switch them from one tank to another to get the babies a lot easier and stuff like that. Right now, she's got fish here, she's got fish there, she's got fish here. So just feeding all the fish takes like 45 minutes, just wandering through the house, figuring out which tanks are fish, which tanks are shrimp. So we've got 2 tanks in my son's room.
Oh, we've lost noise. Yep. We had this happen before we started. We all good to go again? Not quite. No, not yet. Technical difficulties, good times. Ooh, pedal faster. Shut up, Cameron. All right. Well, while we've got a few technical difficulties, we can just sit here and see how we go. Hopefully, get this all sorted as quick as possible. Hope everybody is enjoying this conversation about shrimp, because I most certainly am. I always find it fantastic hearing about different things that we can't not only have, but also when people get really in depth into something on a topic. Yep, we're good to go.
I don't know. Oh, we're good to go?
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. I just bumped it. So we've got 2 stands going on in Jaden's room. Once those stands are finished, then we've got 3 metal stands in the house that are holding tanks. All of the 10-gallon tanks from those stands are going to go in Jaden's room, and then 2 of the metal stands are in our bedroom. The plan is to move those metal stands into the garage, and then I'm going to build at least 2 stands to hold 72 aquariums in our bedroom, and all of the fish are going to go into the bedroom. So that'll just make everything easier to do what we were talking about. But once that's done, then we should be breeding a lot more fish than we are. We have probably 20 ponds outside to breed out different guppies and rice fish right now.
Yeah. With that much water in the house, do you notice any moisture issues or condensation or anything like that going on, or is it a pretty well secured setups with lids and dehumidifiers and that sort of stuff running?
So all the tanks have lids on them, so it keeps all of the humidity down. We keep the AC at 70 degrees in the house, and that pulls out a lot of the moisture and humidity as well. So we don't have to run any of the dehumidifiers because of the AC. However, I do know that it pulls out a lot of moisture, and I got to make sure that the drip lines and stuff like that are constantly freed up, or else it will cause a mess real quick.
Yeah. Being that you live in Florida, is it a year-round outside production, or do you need to bring things inside over the cooler months? Or I know it's quite warm in that region. Is it okay to just keep it all out and away you go?
So for the shrimp, I don't have to bring them inside or heat them or anything like that. But because the breeding is temperature based, they will slow down on breeding a lot. So for like 3 months out of the year, I would say breeding is like reduced to 10% outside. All of the fish, however, besides the rice fish and the mountain cloud minnows, would need to be moved inside. The koi fish also, those are carp, those are good to go out winter.
Yeah.
But all the guppies, mollies, swordtails, goodeids, any of the tropical fish, we would have to bring inside because they would freeze and perish. Any cichlids or anything like that, we couldn't keep all year round, sadly.
Yeah. I've had another weak question up here from the watchers. Oh, was that going to come up? Yep. So what's your most unseen fish that you own? So the most reclusive, and what's your top 5 fish or shrimp species that you I'm assuming that's what you currently have.
So my most unseen fish are actually some aquatic isopods. We've got some native ones that we collected here, and I almost thought that they just all wiped out and there wasn't any left. And every now and then I'll see just one swimming around. So I don't know if they bury, or they're just dug up in a crack in one of the rocks or something like that. But I almost always give up on them, and I think, all right, time to change the water parameters up or do something different. And then I see one swimming around. So that would be my most unseen fish. If it had to be a fish, though, I'd say my false zebra plecos. I barely ever see them.
Okay. What L number is a false zebra pleco?
I think it's L137.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think that's one we get here. I'm absolutely going to have a look at that. Yeah. And shrimp-wise, what are your sort of top 5 that you currently have or have worked on?
Best sellers or my favorites?
Your favorites.
So I have some green's my favorite color. So the top 2 are green. The green Caridina. There isn't a lot of people that have any of those out in the world. I've got now a second generation that are growing up in the tank, and I'm just hoping they gain a little bit more green, like kind of like the color that we have on the ticker down below, or their names highlighted. And then the green Neocaridina, the green emeralds, I have a line that has the back line nice and gold. So those 2. And then I've got some blue steels that are actually crazy blue. There's a lot of gold or greenish coloration to them. Those would probably be 3. The Hummel tiger, the wild type from Finland, the purple and blue and white ones. Those would have to be 4th. And my 5th favorite would probably be, oh man, it's so hard to choose from. Probably like the metallic boas. They got a lot of color to them.
Awesome. So unfortunately, because my page was basically telling me to shut it down, I haven't had to reopen it. So I've actually run out of questions. I had a few more, unfortunately. So I don't have any more structured or scheduled questions that I had. I had a few more sitting on my page, but I can't open it up anymore, unfortunately. So unless we've got some other questions that people would like to know that are watching, I'm all out of them as far as what I had structured wise. So I'm sorry about that.
I got a question for you,
so
though.
If fire away.
Is there any good collecting in New Zealand? If I were to take a visit and go visit my family, is there any dip netting or anything like that?
You're talking about collecting shrimp specifically?
No, just like fish in general.
Yeah, so we do have some native fish that are worth getting your feet in the water for. Natives aren't something that I'm particularly knowledgeable on. I basically deal solely on tropical fish. But there is definitely some around the place. We've got bullies, galaxies and stuff like that. So, some quite nice, good-sized ones. What you miss on like bright coloration you get from really nice subtle patterns and sort of subtle markings that sort of hit on particular angles on the sun and stuff like that. But there's definitely a large group of people here that are pretty keen on our natives, and there's plenty around worth getting in the water for and checking out for sure.
I gotta make the trip one day. My grandma still lives. My grandma still has a bed and breakfast on the hot water beach in Auckland somewhere. So
cool.
We gotta take the trip one day.
Yeah. There's plenty of eels around as well. Like about an hour's drive away from me, there's a landlocked lake that's full of native eels. They'll come up to you, big buggers. So if you're into that kind of stuff, there's plenty of them around. And we do have a couple of species of shrimp hanging around as well. Very, very bland, but they are definitely here. Unfortunately, they don't transfer into any sort of tropical water. They don't last very long in the warmer conditions, so they do take a little bit of work. But they are definitely here. There we go. We've got a couple of people who put some comments up. Yeah, there's freshwater shrimp, bullies, and some other stuff in the Northland, which is a bit further up from Auckland. And is this one going to come up too? Come on, computer. Oh, things just aren't working today. There you go. There's what you're doing. The wild shrimp. Yeah, but they're here. I think there is a native shrimp farm, so to speak, somewhere hanging around as well up in the North Island. But yeah, we're definitely here. But yeah, eels are really common, and there's definitely bullies and other type various species of New Zealand stuff hanging around. So if that's your thing and you're into getting into the water and catching stuff, absolutely. Yeah.
But for Helen's question, she asked if the color could be intensified. Just about anything out there, you can select a breed and intensify the colors and make it better. So it's definitely possible. Just how many generations?
I think,
that's the question.
Yeah, I think the issue with the New Zealand native shrimps is keeping them going for long enough in a home aquarium. From what I've understood from talking to people that have had them and just the longevity of not being able to get them to live long enough, they just seem to pop off pretty quickly. And it's, I think, predominantly due to the water temperature more than anything.
It could also be something to do with diet and stuff like that too, because the ghost shrimp that we have here in our native lakes and stuff like that, even though they're fully 100% freshwater, they just don't survive or do that well in aquariums. That's why, like the Neocaridina and the shrimp that I keep out here in the tubs, those are actually easier to breed than the shrimp that I can go and catch right here at the end of my road. Even if it's the same exact water and everything like that, they just don't do well at all in aquariums. So I don't know if it's the sun and there's some type of freshwater plankton or something like that they're able to constantly eat and feed on that we're not putting in our water here in our aquariums. So it could be very similar with you guys in New Zealand.
Very possible, yeah. Are shrimp constant eaters? They just continue to pick all day long, or do they binge and then stop? No, yeah.
No, I think they're constant. They should be little fat things, and they're not.
Yeah. So as far as your feeding regime goes, does that mean you're dropping food in quite regularly, or just once or twice a day sort of scenario?
No, so we only feed every other day or every 2 to 3 days. The reason for that is because like majority of the food should be growing in the tank. So they're constantly going around and picking that biofilm and farming it, kind of like cows graze a field, So
and we've had someone ask, have you tried putting your wild shrimp into green water tanks?
I've tried to keep green water and it just always clears up for me. So I don't have green water very long, I think, for the shrimp to take off.
And it sounds like there's a few New Zealanders here complaining about how cold it is today. So that's always a good start, as we're a couple of days away from winter. Everyone's getting cold. Okay. So we like to finish off these things with basically what we call a school of six. So it's just 6 really quick questions, nothing to put you on the spot, just a bit of lighthearted stuff. So first and foremost, do you call heads or tails when tossing a coin?
Tails.
Tails. Tails never fails. When playing paper, scissors, rocks, what's your first move?
Usually it changes. I don't use the same one. I try to pick
Sneaky.
it based off of the person. What I think the person's gonna pick. Are they
So
a
do you
hard
mean
type?
like
Are
when
they
I
gonna
play
go
against,
for rock? Or are they a softie? You know, you got to read the person.
yeah. So like when I play against my son, I always know that his first move's going to be rock, so I always go with paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, got that one worked out. If you could have a meal with anybody, alive or dead, from any point in time in history, who would that be?
Oh, Steve Irwin.
Fair call. Fair call. Do you think we're alone in the universe?
No.
No. Are you a tea drinker or a coffee drinker?
Tea. Green tea.
Green tea. And last one is, what is your unicorn fish or shrimp, whether it's to catch it, to see it in the wild, to own it, to spawn it, whatever it happens to be, what would be your one unicorn species?
Probably stingrays, just because we can't keep them here in Florida. So if I moved anywhere else, the first thing I'm probably gonna get is a stingray.
All right, cool. Well, that's all of the 6 that I've got, and all of the questions that I've got. Major apologies. There's some major technical things going wrong today. It's just not working the way that it should be. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's my end too. You're good.
Yeah, and John's in. It just seems like nothing's quite working today when it comes to technology, unfortunately. So yeah,
It's all good.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. I do really appreciate your time. Hopefully, we can maybe do this again sometime and not have technical issues all the way running through it, which would be fantastic.
I'd love to come back anytime.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us. It's much appreciated. Hope you all have a good day. So, happy fish keeping, everybody. Have a good one, and catch you later.